Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of Power Pivots. My name is Scott Armstrong from Limitless. And today, you know how some people just cross your path? And they shouldn't, like they're 12 degrees of separation, but they find their way into your life. And that is what happened with our today's guest, Cathy Hardy. Now, Cathy is a musician. She's a published musician. She has such an incredible story. And usually I have a 2 or 3 minute intro for our guests to come on so that you know who's here. I don't think it's required here. Cathy, good morning to Power Pivots.
Good morning to you, Scott.
How are things out in Mission this morning?
They're rainy and cold, but I got a nice cup of coffee beside me and doing great.
Oh, fantastic. So listen, we like to get into the really heavy questions first, just so that we get our audiences hooked into this. So please tell me what your favorite animal is and why. Remember, I told you to say that.
Well, I have a dog and a cat. So I have a cat who's a Manx, and she's a very small little cat, about 7 pounds, no tail, hilarious personality. I would say she's right now my favorite.
How about an ideal meal? I could cook for you. What would it be?
I love roasted vegetables and a roasted chicken and a Greek salad.
And a Greek salad. Okay.
And a glass of red wine.
I was wondering if you were going to add that on.
And chocolate.
Okay. And I know you get to travel a lot with your music and your work, but if you could go anywhere in the world, you can do anything you want. Where would you go and why?
Ireland.
Ireland.
It's a place I've been wanting to go, and there's Ireland and Scotland. I want to go to Iona. It's a kind of like a spiritual pilgrimage place, and then Ireland. There's a Celtic saint, Saint Bridget, and I'm kind of interested in her, and I'd love to walk where she walked. So that's where I'd like to go.
Very good. Now, I know people, when they listen to podcasts, they often like to go on and visit the website, whoever I'm hosting. Can you give us your website URL?
Absolutely. It's Cathy with a C, CathyAJ
Okay. And just in sort of that 30-second snippet or not, what is it that you do that's it creates a website full of passion like that?
Well, I think I get stumped myself. As you can
I thought I was the only one.
What do I do? Soul care. So I love to create spaces. I love to create songs. I love to create anything that can provide soul care for people. Okay. So it's through experiences, through music, through retreats. That's what I love to do.
Very cool. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But first of all, Cathy has, an incredible story. And we like to revert back because with Power Pivots, we get to places in our lives where, we choose change or change happens to us. And we like to take a look at, how we respond to those changes. And you've had an incredible amount of success, professionally and personally. So that's why I really wanted to have you on the show. But before we get to where we are now and where you're headed to, can we go back and can tell us a little bit about, what childhood was like for you growing up? Because you had a pretty intriguing childhood.
Yeah, I grew up in Harrison Hot Springs. So it's a small little resort town here, about an hour and a half out of Vancouver. And there's one little church in that community, and that's where my father was the minister. And so that had really great things about it and really horrible things about it, because everybody knew that you were the pastor's daughter. So people would change their behavior around you for good or for bad. It was all sorts of crazy things.
Tell us what it was like in Harrison. Yeah, a little bit of...
Yeah, the beautiful part was growing up close to nature, and I think I felt so connected to the landscape, and that's partly why I love being in Mission now. I'm close to the mountains. I'm close to water. But what was... Well, and the other good thing was in growing up in a church community, there was always people around. And so there was always wonderful experiences. But we grew up with a faith that was also at that time a lot more narrow. There was a sense of you're in or you're out.
Okay.
And there was also a strong sense of patriarchy in that, here's God, here's the pastor, here are boys, and then little girls are at the very bottom of that pyramid. And so I know, you know, in talking to my father now, and, you know, people have evolved in their thinking and understanding, but at that time, my idea of myself was I'm a very, very small person. And to gain significance would be, you know, to marry or to go into mission work. Those things had a profound influence on my life. So there were some really great things, but there were also some things that really set my course, I would say, to make certain decisions that I made in the coming years.
So when you said, you know, you felt really small, did that strike you as odd or contrived or, you know, situation specific, or was it just something that you accepted?
I think when you're living an experience, you you don't even know how to analyze it. You're just, that's just your reality. That's just what's true.
Hmm.
And so you don't even realize that you're in a paradigm, that that paradigm is simply true.
Hmm.
And so I think that's why having a paradigm shift later in life is so exhilarating and scary, because what you think is true and what you identify as true suddenly disappears. And if your identity is connected with that paradigm, you can be so disoriented. I would like to share one memory, though, from that time that I I came back to later in life that was really positive. When I was a little girl, one of the jobs I had was to clean the parish. We were living on the same property as the church.
Hmm.
And so my job on Saturday mornings was to dust the window ledges and the pews and to clean the bathrooms. And I was this little artistic girl, and I would take my dust cloth and I would gather the dust, and I wouldn't. I would get as much dust as I could,
Yes.
and then I would fling it into the air at the very center and the front of the church. So just imagine this
Yeah.
little girl, and I'm alone. I'm alone in this beautiful structure, actually, on a Saturday morning. I fling this dust cloth, and those little dust particles in my creative mind would turn into diamonds.
Hmm.
And they would, those, and in that moment, in those moments as a child, I would experience something I later called like the beautiful presence. I just experienced a place of magic and love. And so years later, I would go back to the experience of my Saturday mornings, that I
Yeah.
knew something beautiful there, even though I was spreading dust everywhere.
Well, that's a wonderful story because kids can often find their own little sanctuary or
Yeah.
bright light within
Yes.
those kinds of situations, and just sort of you know, you're now in your, you know, adolescent years. You haven't hit adulthood yet, and if, you know, if listeners wanted to get a sense of who you were, could you sort of give? I think you've given a couple of traits, but, you know, a couple of traits that would have helped define, you know, that defined you as a person at that age.
Hmm. As a teenager, I was super busy and active. I played basketball, and I became the leader of my youth group. We then moved to Abbotsford, and there was 100 kids in the Central Heights youth group, and I was actually the leader of that. I worked. I was doing piano. I ended up doing my grade 10 piano when I graduated, and I was teaching piano already by the time I was 16. So I was just super busy,
Hmm.
um, and passionate, I would say, about God, about being involved in the community. So I was a really active young person, but there was this sense of um, I'm not complete in myself. I
Hmm.
need someone else to complete me.
Okay, so you're still taking what you described when you were younger, that you know, to perhaps get married and
Yeah,
whatnot, and you did actually get married, did you not?
I did.
Yeah.
There was this guy who spoke, and I saw him when I was 17 years old, and he was on his way into missions, and he looked like a really dynamic person, and he had just come from the Middle East and was going back to Africa, and my heart leapt. And to my surprise, he pursued me when I was 18, and
Mhm.
we got married when I was still 19.
When you were 19. Okay. So you haven't reached the 2 decade mark. You were married.
Yay,
You're
I'd
very,
made my goal,
that's
and
right.
we were on our way to Africa. So
Africa.
it was kind of the combination of marriage and missions, and
Okay.
that's
And
goal.
just some clarity around the word missions, because a fair number of folks have a sense of what missions can be, but that was, you're going to other areas to spread the word and to work in a Christian way with communities.
Yeah, we went with an organization called Youth of the Mission, and it was to Uganda. And I didn't really know exactly what I do. I ended up helping to run a little preschool, and ended up working with a bunch of Ugandans to um, record actually their own music. So I actually got involved with music there.
Mhm.
Um, so we did all sorts of volunteer work over the 2-year period. Yeah.
Now, when you'd mentioned you're doing a little bit of music there, did you get a sense that music might grow to be a main route for you later in life, or was it just an enjoyment piece at that time?
I think it was an enjoyment piece and something kind of on the side. But I would say that um, singing with the Ugandans was a liberating experience in that way, in that their passion, like, I had been taught to contain so much of myself, and as an expressive person, there was always a sense of, if I really express myself, I'm embarrassing, and I'm too much, and I'm, like, why would you sing so loud? And um, and they did, and so I would also go back to the memories of singing with these Ugandans later when I got depressed, of how they had no shame, like, wow, just sing hard and sing with passion. So I think they ignited something in me too.
I remember we've gone to Kenya a couple of times to do volunteer work, and walking down the red dirt roads on a
Yes.
Sunday.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you're just drawn to it. This is a force of nature, isn't it?
It is, and there is just an unabashed
Yes.
uh, joy to be human, and that singing is human, and that's something I've come back to, and I realize that they have, that our culture can so easily make, we can feel awkward to sing and awkward to express ourselves, and it's our human right
Yeah.
to be able to express what's inside of us. But yes, it would, if I would think of myself in those years, I would say music was kind of on the side. I would never see
Yeah.
myself as,
Yes.
I am a musician, even though when I look back, I kind of was.
You were. So are you telling me that we have a right to sing, that you would sit down and listen to me sing for 15 minutes and encourage me to do that?
I would be ecstatic.
No other human being has ever volunteered for that kind of what you're going for.
Yeah, actually, I get ecstatic about that. It's like, whatever sound you want to make, I want to be there with you in
Yeah.
that, because whatever sound was wanting to come out of you, that's you. Like, no one else has your body, no one else has your story.
Yeah.
So your sound, there's no one else like you, Scott, in the whole
But
universe.
I guess a lot of folks, when they're thinking about their pivots in life, there is a fear element that, I am leaving an identity, and we'll, I guess maybe I'm leapfrogging here, but
Yeah.
that sense of fear that holds back people's true desires, for fear of embarrassment, of failure, of lack of accomplishment, and yet you have just expressed so eloquently that that is part of the journey. That is who you uniquely are. Yes.
Yeah, I guess that would be the central part of my journey,
Yeah.
is that is where I probably felt the most shame,
Shame.
and yeah, and the greatest amount of being silenced. And so this, everything I just shared, comes from, yeah, the epicenter of, and I might get teary here, but the epicenter of that transformational moment,
Yeah.
and
So
a few transformational moments that have changed my course.
So as we're listening to you speak, we're now in Uganda.
Yeah,
You're married.
yeah,
You're singing.
yeah,
You're with the church community, which you grew up with.
yeah,
Sounds pretty good, but it
yeah.
wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Um, I think in a lot of ways I was a child in my emotional development, and I was looking for my husband to, be kind of how we had idealized husbands to be, and to meet my needs, and to be the head of my home.
Hmm.
And I had still a lot of development to do. So I was in my own kind of place of needing to grow as a woman. But at the same time, my husband was realizing right then that he didn't know if he was identifying anymore with Christianity. And he was withdrawing from me and withdrawing from the missions organization that we were with.
Hmm.
And so I was panicking.
So you
And
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, and so I think with my underdevelopment, I I probably reacted in a more of a clinging way at
Hmm.
that time, and yeah, panicked. We came home and he began to go to school, and we had two children, two daughters, and so then that kind of energy between us kind of deepened. He withdrew more and more into academia and in separation from me, and I panicked and became depressed.
Hmm. So you were in Uganda. There was something you knew that wasn't with your marriage the way you had wanted it to be. You
Yep.
came home to
Mm-hmm.
BC. Is
Yes.
that right? And
Came home to Vancouver. Yeah.
you had children.
Yeah.
Was having children an effort to fill what you thought should be?
I
You're free to
think there was
pass.
kind of back and forth, because there were moments that were still really good, and I think we both had an ideal of what marriage could be, and I think we both really wanted something to work, and he was trying and I was trying.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah, there's also, yeah, a desire to have this family and to have this ideal of what you've grown up to say, that this will make you happy. If I have a husband, if I do missions work, I will be a happy woman. If I
Mhm.
have children, I will be a happy woman. So I think it was kind of a shock to realize I'm not happy. I'm
Mhm.
sad. I'm depressed. I didn't want to be. All my growing up, it said, if I have this, I will be happy. That wasn't true. I wasn't happy.
So at some point, the marriage came to an end. How long had you been married by the time
Well,
your husband decided this wasn't going to work?
we kind of have had like almost two, two endings. So it was 14 years in that he made a decision that he definitely didn't want to have anything to do with the church or Christianity anymore, and he didn't know at that point if he wanted to stay in the marriage with me.
Mhm.
But we kind of had like in a sense, an emotional separation at that time. But he was doing his doctorate at that time, and we had moved to Atlanta, Georgia at that time,
Mhm.
and our girls were 8 and 10 at the time. And then we stayed married for another 12 years. Um, so we stayed married for 24 in all. And I think we're both, even though there was kind of an emotional and spiritual separation, I think we had this ideal of family that we both didn't want to destroy.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of kind of having a broken relationship, that's when I began to do the deep soul work, and that began at that 14-year mark,
Mark,
which is now, um, I guess, yeah, 20 years ago this summer.
20 years ago. So as you're going through this, it's got to be agonizing time. Tell us me a little bit about your, music. Where was music in this, or was it shelved for that period of time?
It was shelved, and I was teaching piano a little bit to support us, but I didn't really enjoy it, and I felt really lost, and I was really, really depressed. And when I knew for sure that my husband was no longer going to want to have anything to do with our religious faith, I remember going for a bike ride in Georgia. So we were living in Atlanta, and I didn't know anybody. So it's kind of this interesting situation where it feels like all of the things that have been years, they were my security, they were all gone. Like the familiar landscape, and my siblings and my parents and my close friends, and now my marriage was crumbling, and just so many things were falling away. So I went on this bike ride, and I called out for help, and I just said, God, I need help. I'm desperate. I absolutely don't know what to do. I'm in a strange country. I'm in a strange place. I mean, the South is, it's an interesting place.
It is.
and yeah, like there's all sorts of people talking like this. And so I called out for help on that bike ride, and it was really weird because this name came to mind, and it was actually an old professor friend of my former husband, who I've never spoken to, but his name came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I raced back home on my bike. I called him up. I said, Ron, I don't know if you even know who I am. I'm so-and-so, and I'm just wondering if you could help me. I'm in a crisis. And he said, I'm not surprised. And he said, I'm going to tell you to do 3 things. And it was just an incredible phone call. And I did those 3 things. And one of them was to find a spiritual director. One of them was to write to his wife, Karen, who became a good friend of mine. And we ended up doing music together when I came back to BC. And I can't even remember what the third one was at this time, but I remember I did all 3. But out of that, I began to do spiritual direction. And one of the things, which a spiritual direction is it's a one-on-one companionship relationship. And that's when my paradigm started to really shift. But so music was shelved, as you said, but there was a moment where I was going for a walk shortly after that. And I remember pushing a button on the corner of North Decatur Road and Claremont. And it was like a moment where time stood still, because I had been asking my soul, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I didn't know what I wanted. I knew what my parents wanted. I knew what the church wanted. I knew what my husband wanted, but I realized I was so lost, and I didn't know who Cathy was. And so I've been asking, like, soul, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Scary question.
Yeah.
And when I pushed that button, it was like this little, like if you're blowing bubbles and there's like kind of that very delicate bubble. It was like a bubble came up from this interior space inside of me, and it had these words in it. I want to sing.
Really?
And I began to cry, and I thought, but I don't know how anymore. I've lost my voice. I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
But I realized if I didn't find a way to sing at that point, that a part of me would die. Mm-hmm. And so that really began my journey to singing.
So that would be sort of the dividing line in the road, perhaps. But tell us, because a lot of people maybe not, certainly not as profoundly as you feel, Cathy, but feel like they have to take steps in a certain direction, but they don't. They just they intellectualize, and they feel it inside, and that soothes their angst or their conflict inside, and they just live with that. You didn't, though. You took some steps towards that. Can you sort of tell us those very few nascent steps that helped get your momentum going?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Well, it's funny, like when that little bubble came up, and I've recognized this with other people, the first, you know how we all had these voices in our head. Well, the first voice was my mother's shouting at me, well, that's not practical.
We heard that.
Yeah. So I think sometimes like these very fragile dreams and longings that come with us, you know, then there's another voice that comes in and just say, well, you're nuts. Like, how stupid is that? So you're right. It was like scary. Can I do it? So I just held the question, how do I go about it? And it was like a couple days later, I was at a playground with my daughter, and I was talking to another parent, and she said she was part of this community choir. And it was like, bingo, that's your doorway. And I said, can I join? And so I had to audition, and I did, and I got in, and then I sang with the Atlanta Community Choir for 3 years, and we did Bach and Fauré and all sorts of awesome stuff that I'd never done before. And the music began to heal me. I would run out of most rehearsals to the bathroom and cry, and I go there and cry in a bathroom stall, and then I come back all red-faced. But nobody said anything. They were just so loving, and I attribute, like, it was just a safe place to kind of come out of this very broken place. And after 3 years, our time in Atlanta was over, and then we moved back to BC, and I had also been really impacted by the Music Cup. I had someone had introduced me to the Music Cup Taizé. It's a spiritual community in France founded by Brother Roger. And I realized the songs that I learned, the prayer songs from that community, had changed my life in that 3-year period also. So when I came back to BC, I wanted to help share those songs. So I began to create evenings of sung prayer here in the Fraser Valley, which is 17 years ago now.
Wow. Can I ask you a question as you get into that? You and I, when we had our chat last week, we talked about masculine and feminine energy.
Yeah.
We both chuckled about that.
Yeah, I love that. Love that conversation.
And, you know, being a stereotypical guy, you know, I see a goal and I reverse engineer. We talked about that. And
Yes.
here you are. The door proverbially opens, and you know it's singing at a choir, not getting paid, but an expression of your passion.
Yeah.
For most masculine energy folks, and it sounds like your mom might have been a masculine energy person.
Yes.
Well.
Yes.
You know, that's not a plan. That's not a door. That's an evening activity kind of thing. So I'm just wondering how, you know, because I know I don't represent how everybody thinks, but I think what you're doing here is absolutely incredible. So how did you manage to be satisfied or encouraged enough to take that one step to the choir? You didn't need to see the whole path.
No, I entered this. It's really interesting you asked this. I get so excited about this because, yeah, it's the opposite. It feels like it's the opposite journey. It's kind of a journey in and down instead of out. It's or a journey like from the outside in, from this, like, from that really deep place of where that bubble came from with I want to sing, and then just almost following it. Sometimes I've called myself, like, I feel like a blindfolded puppy dog that's sniffing a scent, and I'm just following this scent, wondering where it's going to take me.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like a very good marketing plan, does it? But in that crisis, my mom, the practical one, who's a nurse, she gave me this prayer that began to form me. And it was an old prayer based on the writings of St. Patrick, which gave me the confidence to just do the next step. And it was a prayer of bind my life to the path that love has for my life. Something like that. Anyways, I've changed the words to make it my own. I kind of thought, well, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know who I am anymore. But if there is a plan, I want to align myself with the highest vision of that perhaps even in my little puny brain.
Yes.
I don't know what that is because I can only think in this way. But what if there's a real beautiful plan for my life? What if I just want to commit myself every day to that plan, even though I can't figure it out? And that's what I began to do. And
Okay.
so then I began to trust these little ways and kind of be curious, like, hmm, I wonder, I wonder.
Hmm. So, did you ever have to get to that place? Because a lot of people, when they pivot, they wonder, the practical things. Can I make
Yeah,
mortgage payment? Can I pay for kids' school?
yeah.
Things of life. How did that play into it, or did you just, you know, put yourself fully in and trusted that the plan was going to provide for you?
Well, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That was just a constant wrestle, constant wrestle. And so it's really interesting because, like, I wrote down before we started chatting, I wrote down the list of all the albums that I did. And the first one was called Rest.
Hmm.
And like, it's such a contrary word to like work hard and figure it out. And it was one of the first words that came to me in this powerful way, like, by resting. Like, it doesn't mean being lazy, but it was this sense of, can you trust the divine? And I learned to scream, no, no, I don't trust you at all, no. But it became this hilarious inner dialogue of, um, no, I don't trust, but I want to trust.
Hmm. Hey,
And
are you a risk person at all? Because I was going to ask you something that you can pass on again. We're talking about this great pivot point to singing. And I don't
okay,
know if it's appropriate as a pro, whether you want to do it. Could you sing a line or two or something just so that people can hear you and feel you as you're describing your journey? I just thought of this and I apologize for not prepping you for this earlier, but I'll let you
okay,
can pass on this.
okay. No, I'd be happy to. So the song Rest actually is, are you tired, overburdened? Are you anxious about tomorrow? Are you spinning round in circles? Have you lost your focus? Have you lost your ground? Well, look at me, look at me. Rest your soul in my loving gaze. Rest your soul in my love. Rest your soul in my loving gaze. Rest. For I'm not tired, I'm not overburdened, and I'm not anxious about tomorrow. I'm the still point at the center, and I'm your resting place this hour.
That is beautiful. I'm good for the week. I don't need to do anything else. Thank you,
Thanks, Scott.
Kathy.
Well,
So,
there is this kind of this juxtaposition all the time, like, I'm freaking out, I gotta figure this out, and then it's like, center in, focus in, look at me, am I freaked out? No, I'm not, I'm good. What's the next step? All you have to do is, like, what's the next step for today? Okay, I need to call this person, I need to pay the bills, I need to do, okay, just do that and do it with your whole heart. Do it with your whole heart, Kathy, just today, with your whole heart. And then we're going to do tomorrow.
yes, fair enough. So for folks who heard that beautiful song, I hope you don't
Yes.
mind if I repeat that several times throughout the podcast because that is just gorgeous. You've gone on with music.
Yeah.
Your daughters are graduating from university or have graduated. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
And in terms of your music, how many albums have you produced?
6.
6 albums. That's incredible.
Yes.
And you give live performances too. And just on a ballpark basis, how many performances and include your retreats in there too, because I know your music's
Mhm.
going to be involved in that. How many would you do on a monthly or yearly basis?
Well, the retreat work is true. It's becoming like kind of the place where the music really comes alive. So there's usually something happening every month. No, there is something happening every month. Sometimes twice a month.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I understand through a mutual acquaintance of ours that you've gone online and put a course online as well, haven't you?
Yes, I did. It's a course on getting to know yourself.
Mhm.
And based on my experiences with, for me, getting to know myself,
Mhm.
realizing that that's actually a challenge, but it changed my life.
And if folks wanted to find out where
Mhm.
they could access that course on the website,
They
yes?
can find it on the website, yes. And the song Rest, I recorded it on my first album, Rest, but now it's recorded on the new album I just released called Remain in Love.
Very cool. I'm not wrapping this up. I just, because we were just in that
Hmm.
musical and space, I don't like sequencing things if I'm going to lose the impact of things. Um, so you've been doing music now for how long?
Well,
As a profession and income generating opportunity?
yeah, I would say the last 11 years.
Okay.
But the music itself hasn't generated a lot of income, but it's provided opportunity. And then the retreat work has, I would say, been the place where that has um, really been the place of financial provision.
Hmm.
And then I've taught music too. But what's happened is that um, I taught used to teach 4 days a week and to help support me with all this other stuff, and now I'm down to 2 days. But the students that I have, I'm so excited and passionate about it. It doesn't feel like how I used to feel about teaching. It feels like a great joy. So it's a beautiful balance now with doing, like, every day is a day I love. It's just an amazing experience after knowing what it feels like to be so depressed and so disconnected with myself.
Do you teach vocal lessons as well then, or is it?
I do. I
Okay.
teach singing and some ukulele and some piano. I
Yeah.
have two little groups of girls that come that have been learning to sing in harmony with each other.
Mhm.
It's just to see them, their faces light up, knowing that they can use their voice like that is amazing. And I've got some adults that come too that, let's say, like yourself, you
Mhm.
know,
I wouldn't do
yeah,
that to
yeah,
you.
you wouldn't do that. I'd be paying you to come. uh, it's fun. I realize, like, there's one woman who's coming to see me now that she brought her daughter for lessons, and then she came quietly to me and she said, "Kathy, actually, I need to sing too. I had this dream when I was 7, and my mom said I couldn't, and and I need to find it now." And so to accompany her on rediscovering something from her childhood is such a privilege.
Yes. So a lot of folks are going to be going, my gosh, they're going to be in awe of you, of your pivot, your journey. Pivot doesn't do it justice. Let's, I'll be. This is a beautiful journey. Thoughts, points of wisdom, comments for those who are, maybe at the brink of taking a significant step that's going to cause them discomfort, but maybe the way they have to go, or those who are getting close to the brink, and just, you've done it. What would some of your words be to them?
Take time to get really still. It's scary to listen to yourself. And there's a lot of voices of accusation that will tell you the opposite. But deep down, the deepest part of you is beautiful. And the deepest part of you knows. And you ultimately can trust your deepest wisdom, and it will guide you into. I kind of see people like a tree, that if you go down into your roots and you really take time to nourish the tree that you are, the beauty of your tree is going to emerge. And I guess that would be my
Mhm.
deepest philosophy, is that each of us are this beautiful tree, and if we take time to nourish, feed your soul, that the beauty of you is going to show up and we're going to love it.
Mhm. Do you tend to hang around others who've had, power pivot points in their lives, or and the second question is, are any of them mentors, or do you have mentors, or just guides as points of people who can help you along the way?
I love that question. I'm always seeking people out. I yearn for those to inspire me and to pull me forward. So yes, there's a woman that I have seen now for 10 years who is my spiritual director and mentor. And of course, I've been taking out in Niagara Falls. There's a bunch of people there that really inspire me too. And then I love people that aren't here anymore who through their books, they inspire me. So, but one of the things I love, my first mentor, her name was Joy. What I could say about her is that she never pitied me. She never felt sorry for me, but she held a space for my becoming. And I would guess that's what I would want for everybody, that we would have somebody who holds a space for our becoming and say, you are amazing. You are magnificent. I hold a space for you to become all that you are. And I'm not afraid of you. I'm not intimidated by you. I'm not overwhelmed by you, but I celebrate you.
That's a beautiful wordsmithing way of saying that. I've never heard that before. That's quite special. For the listeners, if they want to check out some of your music retreats, or see if they can even find you in a live place to perform, your website is where we would go to.
Yeah, there's a list of upcoming events, upcoming retreats. There's a retreat coming up. Well, there's many, so you can check out the website. Go to the events. I got a list to do.
For the audience here today, if Cathy and I didn't connect today, I don't think I was going to see her till like 2019. So get her going early. Going future, you're living a wonderful vision for yourself now. 2 or 3 years from now, I know you're probably the kind of person who has other things that you might like to see come along. That may be too much masculine energy to interject into our conversation.
No.
But some other aspirations to see your if we can, just sort of your pivot, your music grow.
Yeah, I think I would love to travel a little bit more and share more of this music, more of these stories. I'm excited to do soul work, retreat work in other places. I've just set up some retreats in Niagara Falls and would love to share them in other places. So I think just more of what already is, because this is feeling really congruent with my deepest heart. So I would just say more.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to, I believe it's Kenya and Uganda in next March to do some of our work, and it has a musical theme. So maybe you and I can dialogue on that.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
People, you just meet them, you just didn't expect to, and all kinds of wonderful things happen. Hey, Cathy, thank you so much for being a guest here on Power Pivots.
Oh, thank you, Scott. I appreciate your amazing questions and your heart. Thank you.
You've opened up mine. A little more feminine energy has been tucked in there for the day. I'll probably have the best week of my life. For those that are listening, please take Cathy's energy and optimism and tenacity to heart. It's provided an incredible journey for her as well. So everyone have a great week. Cathy, too, thank you so much.